And that is when you go to a caving event or a rigging event and you see someone else's rigging, and if you show up to a rescue call or whatnot, you can kind of tell the difference between the professionals and the newbies by some of these characteristics of how they tie their knots. The people who are really good at their knot tying are the ones that have kind of, they've got more
OCD.
professionalism. They're what?
OCD.
Oh, they have OCD. Yes, that's true. But like it's commitment to excellence in their craft is essentially what it indicates, right? So what we're going to do is walk through these 4 different things that should allow you, if you master them, to look like you better than you are. Okay, and that's ultimately the goal, is to look better than you are. Okay, yeah. So that was Kirsten Barr. She just messaged me and said she'll be back later. Okay, so here's the thing. There are basically 4 things to be aware of with every single knot. It needs to be correctly tied. It needs to be correctly dressed. It needs to be set. That means tightened down. And that needs to be efficient. Those are the 4 things. And essentially, that's the order in which people screw them up. Most people tie their knots correctly. That's pretty easy. Like you can tie a knot correctly. But dressing it, not a lot of people get it dressed correctly. About half the people I see will dress their knots correctly. Now, the people who actually set their knots, make them tight, is even smaller. We're like 20% or so. Now, the ones that actually tie efficient knots, that's incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. Okay. So what I look for in the knots is when I show up to an event, is it correctly tied? Is it correctly dressed? Is it set? And is it efficient? Okay. So let's show you what these things look like. And I'm going to use the figure 8 knot as an example, just because everyone already knows it. Okay. So here we have a figure 8 knot. Now, my question to you is this correctly tied?
Turn it back around so I keep turning it. No, it's not.
Nope, that's not correctly tied. With that said, I have seen this before when I've rolled up somewhere. Okay, this is not a correctly tied, not a correctly set, not a correctly dressed, and it's a super inefficient knot. It's a piece of trash. Okay, will this kill someone?
Probably not.
Probably not, but I'm not happy about it. Okay, now here's another knot. This one is also a figure 8 knot. Now this one is correctly tied. But notice it's not dressed. Now what dressed means is that all the strands of that knot are parallel, they're nice, laying flat, and all the little holes in the knot are filled up by turns of the rope. So that's a correctly tied knot. That's not going to kill anyone. No one's ever died with this knot. But it's ugly. I mean, would you trust someone who tied that? Eric is like, yes, I would, because I'm a canyoneer.
No, worse, he's a climber.
Worse.
Right. This is a piece of shit. Okay. It'll work. And if I see that in rigging, I'll be like, okay, fine. I'll suffer through it. But I don't want that because it's correctly tied, but it's not correctly dressed. Here is a knot, a figure 8 knot that is correctly tied and correctly dressed. And it's also set. See how everything is laying nice, flat, parallel to each other? Like that looks like a sexy knot.
Except your bite's massive.
Well, yeah, I'm getting to that. Okay, that's the last one. That's efficiency.
I know. I'm trying to upstage you and throw you off.
Right. So this is definitely like that's what you're looking for in your knot. You want it to be nice with all of the strands wrapped around beautifully. They're nice and parallel. None of them cross each other. That's a beautiful knot. The drawback to this knot is that it's got like a 9-10 inch long tail, and this bite is huge. Okay, it's enormous. All that wasted material. And here is why. When you're using a bite knot, like a loop knot, you're going to put a carabiner in, right? Well, you only need it big enough to put the carabiner in it. All the rest of this rope, this tail, and all this extra slop in that knot, all of that is extra. Well, when you're rigging in a cave, sometimes that extra 1.5 feet matters. And it can matter a lot. So what your goal is to get a knot that is, and I'll just show you like my perfect example. This is a figure 8 knot that is just barely large enough. The bite is barely large enough to fit my carabiner through it. In fact, I have to kind of wedge it just a smidge, but there you go. The knot is correctly tied, it's dressed, it's set, and it's efficient because it has a little tiny bite. And notice that tail, it's only about as wide as my palm. That's all you need. Now, if you want to see the difference between this knot and this knot, what I'm going to do is show you the amount of rope that is extra. I took that much rope, about 1.5 feet, out of that. This is the good one. I have an extra 1.5 feet of rope because I tied the knot correctly. Well, you know what I can do with 1.5 feet of rope? Holy cow. I can do all sorts of crazy stuff with 1.5 feet of rope. I can tie extra knots. I can make my haul system 1.5 feet longer. All kinds of craziness. Okay. So my goal for you guys is this: correctly tied, set, dressed, and efficient knots. Okay. Any questions on those, that general idea, that general concept? Yeah, what do you got, Eric?
What's the rule of thumb with tail on knots? Because obviously you don't want your tail too short, but if you're trying to be efficient, you don't want it too long either.
So the answer is no longer than 4 inches. Now, in a knot like a figure 8, when you pull on this thing, as it turns out, this actually gets a little bit longer as it tightens down. So you just don't want it so short that it has the potential of sucking up at all. I will happily work on a rope that's got a 2-inch tail there, but no longer than 4 inches. And so my rule of thumb is, does it fit on the palm of my hand? If it fits on the palm of my hand, I'm good. Now, that's the case for knots that don't need a backup knot. For things like a bowline, I make sure that I have a backup knot plus a little bit of extra tail. So about 3 to 4 inches of extra tail. Okay. So not too much, not too little. It's Goldilocks time.
Sorry, I got a question for you.
Yeah, please.
So what is it that you like to usually back up your bow line with?
I use a Yosemite finish because I can do a lot of cool things with the Yosemite finish. And if you want, I'm happy to show that to you guys now. Okay.
That'd be great.
Now, here's what my challenge for you guys is. While you're learning your knots, you are not going to tie this. It's not going to happen, and that is okay. Give yourself permission to screw this up. Because what you want to tie during practice is start by tying this, the one that's correctly tied, set, and dressed, but is not efficient. And then the more you practice by removing the extra slack. Okay, so for tonight, go for correctly tied, set, and dressed. You can think about the efficiency, but don't worry about it. Okay, forgive yourself, because it'll take quite a while to get to the point where you tie this correctly every single time. Okay, so let's do figure 8s, and then what we'll do is we'll do bowlines, and I can do Yosemite finish that way. Okay, now here's some.
Before you move on.
Yeah.
So would you say of those 4 points that you've made, would you say that they are in order of priority of importance?
Yes.
Okay.
Correctly tying it is definitely more important than dressing it. As far as we understand, dressing a knot doesn't significantly increase its strength. It just makes it look prettier and easier to inspect. Yeah. Setting the knot means that you don't have a whole lot of slack in there. And then the efficiency is just style points for like, oh, I'm rigging a cave, right? So getting it correctly tied, that's number one. And that's what you see with like climbers is they'll tie a figure 8 and then they'll have like 3 feet of extra tail and they'll tie it in like backup knots around. It's just insane, right?
Yeah.
When they could just tie it correctly to begin with a short tail, and then they'd have an extra 4 feet or 8 feet of throw that they could be using to actually top rope or belay. But that's my 2 cents, right? I'm not a climber. Okay. So let's start with a figure eight on a bite, because we're going to use this for like 95% of our rigging in the United States. Okay. And the easiest thing to do here, and this will take a little bit of practice, is figuring out exactly how much rope is necessary to tie the knot correctly. Now for me in this rope, it's a little over a foot that I need to tie that really nice tight figure eight. But here's how to do this. What you do is you keep that tail on the outside and you just drop it over. Okay. And you let this top one slide behind, and in your view, will look like in front of the other loop. Now, at this point in time, you can just tie your figure eight. Now, the reason why I teach you that is because when you're done with that figure eight, I botched it. When you're done with it, sorry, let me do it again because I screwed it up. When you're done with it, it'll already be dressed. See, I didn't have to dress a thing. Now, if you can't get that to work, what I'd recommend doing is give yourself like another 1.5 feet and then try that one more time. Looks like that. Do you guys want me to show that little demo again?
I have one question about the figure eight.
Yeah.
I read in some book that you want the weighted strand, so the strand that you're going to be climbing on, you want that to be on the top of the bridge here. Is that true?
So, and this is so ironic. I just got an email from a guy in the Czech Republic who just tested a few hundred knots, and he did test the inside and outside versions. There is a small strength gain in one orientation over the other with that particular rope type, but it's a few percentage points.
So it's doesn't matter too much.
Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about a couple percentage points, you've screwed up your rigging already.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
So yeah. Anyway.
Cool.
So yeah, all I'm doing is I'm just taking it, bending it over itself, wrapping it around, and it'll take a little bit of practice to get it so that it's set and dressed every single time. But you can see that like pretty quickly you figure out like how long your bite's got to be. Now that tail is a little bit long, but you know, not bad. So I'm doing this in about 1.5 feet of rope. Your length will vary. So I think, Eric, you're using cordage. It'll probably be less. You probably need only 1 foot. Used to doing this at speed. There we go. Debbie, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay, something's wrong with my headset. You had made mention of holding it a certain way. Can you show that again? That I haven't seen before.
Yeah, so what you're doing is you're holding the two strands, and I'm trying to get it all in the same frame. There we go. So you've got this tail strand right here, and you've got the other strand right next to it. And what you're doing is you're just holding them so that if you want the tail on the inside or the outside, you just put the tail on the top. You put the tail on the bottom, depending on whatever, you know, because Matt was saying you might want the tail in one orientation or the other. I don't particularly care. I've been putting it on the outside. You can also do it on the inside. What you're doing is you're just, as you're tying the knot, you're dressing it. So when I fold it over, I know that this top bridge has got to be flat, so I just lay it flat. And then I wrap this other portion around, slide it in here.
It was holding the rope. It was a holding the rope I was questioning. Now, that brings up another question. I was at Tofi, and they nailed it big time for how the tail came out of the. So you're just talking about the figure eight, not the bowline, because the bowline, they were really, it had to come out the right side, the correct side.
I mean, it needs to come out. I mean, for most applications of the bowline, it should be coming out in between the two legs of the bowline, in the middle. Okay, now if you've got this down where you're tying the figure eight, let's talk about how to tension or tighten that figure eight as a whole. Because a lot of people are gonna tighten it, but they're not gonna tighten it as well as it could be. So let's see. Let's get this tied here real quick. Of course, the time that I'm trying to tie it, to give an example, I completely botched the tie because that's how I roll apparently. Okay. Now, when you are tightening this knot, what you want to do is you want to pull on the tail, the standing line, and both sides of the bite. Pull on all four pieces that are coming out of the knot. Not just one side or the other. Pull on each strand individually. Yeah. So if I've got a correctly tied and dressed knot here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on the tail, pull it on the standing line. I'm going to pull on the two sides of the loop. And that gets it nice and tight. Is that kind of tracking? Okay. Do you guys want to go over this knot more, variants on this knot, or should I go on to a bowline where there's a little bit more things to play with?
I have a quick question with that. So if you are tightening the knot like that, say before a climbing fall, is it going to be easier to untie after a large fall on that knot?
So that's a good question.
In a caving application on like a rebelay, because I've cleaned rebelays before and had them be pain in the butts to untie. Like that's the worst part of cleaning a rebelay is untying the knot.
Sure. There are two answers to this. Sorry,
Let
what was
me
that, John?
guess. One of them is going to be bowling on a bite.
Yeah, I'd switch the knot to bowline on a bite. Then you'll never have a problem untying it.
Yeah.
The reason why you want to get your knot nice and tight is that when you are doing that knot cross or that rebelay cross, the length of that knot plus the carabiner is the length at which that person is going to have to stand up or sit down to cross that rebelay. And so if you can make that shorter, there are lower forces on that anchor.
So that brings up the question that we've been taught before is on something like this, put a beaner in between so that when you're ready to, after it's been loaded heavily, so when you're ready to take it out, it hadn't like turned into cement. You take the beaner out and then you can untie your knot. What's your opinion on that?
I think you just switch to a bowline on a bite.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So instead of tying a figure eight, what you do is you tie a bowline on a bite. So let me tie that for you, really.
I'm talking about situations where, okay, I'm not in search and rescue anymore. I guess I have to get my brain around that because it was mandatory on figure eight.
What, with a carabiner in the middle?
No, we put the carabiner in there to keep it from not ever wanting to untie again.
Oh, that'll work. And I'm just saying
doesn't weaken it.
No, I won't. That's not going to weaken it at all. Not in a replay context. Not at all. What am I doing here?
Also, going back to Eric's question, dressing your knots properly does make it easier to untie them, doesn't it, generally?
Usually, yeah. Okay, so this is an ugly, ugly hitch. So here is a correctly tied, set, and dressed bowline on a bite. And so you see that the gain, the amount of the distance between the carabiner and the knot is smaller than a correctly tied, set, and dressed figure 8. They also use slightly less rope. So if you are going to go do a rebelays, I would switch to this knot personally. Europe has already switched to this, and they're trying a whole bunch of other stuff like the fusion knot and the Karash knot and all sorts of craziness. But pretty much everyone seems to be doing this because it's easy to remember and it's incredibly easy to untie.
Can you do that again? Sorry, I was distracted.
Sure. I didn't actually.
He did it
Sure.
off screen because he
Yeah.
wasn't sure he could remember.
Okay, you're gonna die.
So it's the bowline is all it is?
It's a bull on a bite, yeah. So what you do is
Okay.
you create that loop, right? That loop of the bowline, and you just start by tying the bowline, but with this loop or with this bite. And instead of finishing the bowline, you pull it over the entire assembly,
Okay, I remember now. All right, thank you.
making a bowline on a bite. So yeah, I would, rather than bringing the extra carabiners, I mean, I just don't see the point in bringing the extra carabiners when you can just tie a more efficient knot. That's just me. Anyway. Okay. So how,
I mean that we should switch the bowlines on bites.
for rebelays?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're worried about untying it, I'd totally do that. The bowline on a bite is easy to untie. Even after it's been loaded to like 1,000 pounds, you can still easily untie it. Because to untie anything, what makes something easy to untie is the fact that it has a bridge. So let me put this together again. I did not make that look pretty.
Also, you remember how much fun that rebelay in Nefs was? This would totally have removed that issue.
Right. So you see with this knot that you have this little bridge right here that runs all the way around. To untie it, all you have to do is grab that bridge and pull down. When you pull down, all of a sudden this entire thing is loose. So knots are easy to untie when you have a bridge. One bridge versus two. Figure eights have two bridges, and as a result, they're paid. Okay. Are we good with the figure eight on a bite? Can we move on to like a bowline or something crazy? Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to tie a bowline in your reference frame, which is gonna be interesting. So I'm gonna have a standing line that's kind of hanging over my hand, and then I'm gonna make a loop. What's important about this loop is that there is a tree, if you will, just above that loop. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that the end of my rope is a caver, because duh. Now the caver's inside the cave, that's the entrance to the cave, and of course is going to come out of the cave because, I mean, duh, he's got to go pee. He goes behind the tree to pee because he's not a heathen, and then once he's done peeing, he goes back down into the cave where he belongs, or she. And when you're done, you have a bowline. Now there are a couple things about this bowline that you should be aware of. Your tail should be coming out in between these two pieces. That is the ideal. If it comes out the other side, it's just called a, what is it, an outside bowline. And it's just as strong, but it has a, it can collapse if you have ring loading on it. So it's not ideal. Now the thing
So
with,
I got a
yeah,
question.
please.
With that, you did that first loop that kind of we go up and around and down, and I didn't quite understand that on the bite. I get it on the single strand method, but I don't quite get how to make that first loop when it's on a bite.
Oh, it's identical. So if I've got 2 strands, what I do is I just form a loop. And again, the tree is behind that loop. Sorry.
All right. I didn't know if you'd use just one of the strands or both of them to make
You
that
use both
loop.
of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Both of them. Okay, now I'm going to try to shorten this all up so that you can all see what I'm doing. Now, the problem with the bowline is this. The bowline's a great knot, but if you kind of hold it in your hands and kind of jiggle it and flick it, you can get it to loosen up. And you can even try that right now. Just like beat it a little bit, and you'll see that it opens up pretty readily. So this knot is, while fantastic, it needs a backup knot. And there are a lot of ways you can do a backup for these things. The easiest way to do this is just tie an overhand knot. So what you have is you've correctly tied, set, and dressed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten down all the strands by pulling on all 4 pieces. Now what I'm going to do is take this tail and I'm going to wrap it around the line that it came down next to, and I'm just going to tie an overhand knot. Did not give myself enough tail. Okay. So what I have now is I have a bowline that has an overhand knot that's sucked up right next to it. And this is where I get to criticize the climbers again. So take a look at what you did, Eric. You have a correctly tied, set, and dressed knot, and then you see that you had your backup knot a couple inches away. If that backup knot ever comes into play, it's going to have to pull through that extra couple inches of the backup that's loose before it engages. So you really want to get that nice and tight right up against it. I mean, see how tight that is? Like it's, you know, it's hard. Right. And so that's what you're shooting for.
Better?
Yeah, a lot better. That looks gorgeous. Nice, correctly set, dressed, tied, dressed, and set. The loop's big, but again, we're not caring about that today. Right? That's one alternative. Now, if you happen to have a ton of rope tail available to you, what you can do, and I'll see if I can do this in front of you guys, you can tie a full barrel knot. I may not have enough rope for this. I don't have enough rope. Give me a sec. A barrel knot will work just fine. Okay, so I've got my bowline. Now I'm going to wrap this around a couple of times and tie a barrel knot. It can also be, it's half a double fisherman's if that's the nomenclature you're used to. Okay.
Well, Tom, is the barrel knot for a safety knot?
It's a safety knot, yeah. Now you can do that with an overhand knot like I showed you before, or you can do it with the Yosemite finish. You can also do it with a barrel knot. I don't particularly care.
Okay, so you're still doing the bowline and then adding the barrel
Yeah.
for safety.
You need some sort of safety. It doesn't have to be barrel knot. I actually don't like the barrel knot personally because it eats a lot of rope. But a lot of people know it. And so if you know the knot and you know you need a backup, it's totally acceptable to tie there.
So that's what Yosemite finish is about locking that bowline so it doesn't,
Yes.
I mean, I've heard of it and seen it, but I
Yeah.
didn't know what the reason was, but it's a safety knot.
Yes.
Safety portion of that knot.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the thing with the Yosemite finish, and I can't stress this enough, is that if you screw up this Yosemite finish, you can make the bowline fall apart.
Hmm.
And I love the Yosemite finish because I get it right every time. And I check to make sure I got it right every time. Right? Because you tie your knots, you tie them, you dress them, you set them, you inspect them, right? I always make sure that I have my Yosemite finish tied off correctly before I end up loading it. But there are some individuals who simply are not going to do that, in which case don't use the Yosemite finish.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So do we all have the bowline down with a finish knot of some sort before I move on to the Yosemite finish?
I do, yeah.
We're good? Okay. So I want to show you the Yosemite finish because you can do a lot of cool things with it. So we'll do it, and then I can show you a couple fun tricks you can do with it. So again, we're just going to start with the normal bowline.
Hello.
So I got the normal bowline. I got the tail coming out in the middle. Now, the way to get this right every time is that you can kind of see that on the bowline itself, you've got this tree that comes down, it comes around, and then it forms this back loop over here, this back loop right there. What you're essentially going to do there is you're going to follow that, that turn. So you're essentially going to follow this piece of rope around. So we're going to take our tail and we're going to follow this rope right here. So it's going to wrap around, underneath, and then what we're going to do is we're going to bring that right back up. See this bridge here that is around our tree? We're going to put that Yosemite finish right through there. And I'll show you what this looks like tied, set, and dressed here in just a second, and then I'll show that to you again. Okay, so the Yosemite finish looks like a bowline, right, with an extra loop here on one side or on the bottom. Then when you flip it over, it looks very much like a figure eight. See how all these strands are parallel? And then the tail exits the top of that knot. Okay.
So, question, because I've been obnoxious. In one of these manuals, it says you can't ring load a bowline with the tail coming out of the inside. Is that correct?
So, I mean, this is more of a semantics discussion than anything else. You can do it. It has a higher probability of failing, though.
Okay.
So let me tie that for you really quickly and show you what we're talking about here.
Hey, Tom, please explain ring load, please. I don't understand that term.
Yes, give me just a sec. Let me tie it, and I'll show you what we mean by ring loading. Because you're asking a great question, and I, of course, didn't know what that meant for years. So let's just tie this so that you can actually see. Let me pull some slack out of this so we can do all of it at once. Okay, so here is a correctly tied bowline, but you notice the tail is coming out the side. It's not coming out between these two pieces. Okay. When you pull test this particular knot, it's basically the exact same strength as a bowline with the tail on the inside, an inside bowline. The difference is that if I take this ring and I start to pull it apart, what you'll see is that I can pretty much get this thing to pull through.
If it's bouncing around and jiggling, then it's going to.
Right. And you can see I haven't pulled too hard, but what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to take this tail and I'm starting to pull it through. And I might be able to do it. Okay, I'm having a hard time doing it. Yeah, I might be able to get it. Come on.
Well,
Let's
I can
lock it.
see that as you loosen and add pressure to that, it works its way out.
Yeah, it works its way out. And
Yeah.
we have seen this in practice, like in climbing scenarios,
Mhm.
and in loading of some litters in some orientations. This loading has occurred. And so that ring loading configuration, that is ring loading, by the way, pulling the ring in multiple different directions, has a tendency, oh, here we go, has a tendency to get it to fail. In fact, you can see this, here we go.
Yeah.
Got it to fail. Okay. Now, if I have a normal bowline, let me tie that again, and I do that same thing, right? I'm gonna just do this. I can get it to fail, but it takes a bit more mucking around. I didn't type that one down as much. So that's what they're talking about. Okay.
Gotcha.
So do you guys want me to do that Yosemite finish again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one more time would be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty simple, but that was makes it nice and solid.
Yeah, it makes it really nice and solid, and it's easy to inspect because everything looks like it's supposed to be together.
And it comes apart pretty easily.
Yeah, it has the
Loaded.
same sort of ease of coming undone because it's got that one bridge, this bridge right here.
Yeah.
Just grab that and pull it, and it comes right out.
Cool. That's nice.
Okay, so once again, you tie your bowline with the tail on the inside. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna follow this piece of rope right here all the way out like it's the tree. So just follow that strand, and then I'm gonna put it up and behind that bridge right there. See how when I tighten it, I pull on all 4 strands, and we're left with, oh, sorry, a bowline. So it'll look like a bowline with an extra loop at the bottom. When you flip it over, it'll look almost like a figure 8. It's got this half of the figure 8 with that bridge. And then to unlock it, all you do is grab that bridge, pull up, and now it's loose.
This looks weird to me.
Well, that's probably because you're weird. That doesn't look right.
Did you try doing it right?
Try pulling the tail out and make sure that you have a bowline tied correctly first.
Think like a caver, not a climber.
Yeah, pretend like you like your life. I'm violating like every rule I have as a teacher, like not to discourage students.
This is like your one chance. We're all grown-ups. So.
I know, it's great.
Well, there's one. Matt's might average it out to like the normal age you're used to teaching there.
Eric, Matt's an adult too.
No, the small person in Matt's,
Only
house
physically.
there. Yep. And then I actually had a question. I've heard, the Yosemite tie-off is great, but if you do it wrong, you'll kill yourself.
That's true.
Okay. So do it right.
Yeah, do it right.
All right.
So it's like all knots. You tie them, you dress them, you set them, you inspect them. And if it doesn't look like a correctly tied Yosemite finish, tie something else. Like here's my advice for tying bowlines. Yeah, flip that over, Eric. Yep, that's correctly tied, set, and dressed. Beautiful. Very good. So what I would recommend you guys do is get like a short piece of rope. I think this is like 4 or 5 feet of rope, 6 feet of rope, something like that. And then like watch a movie. Go watch like Serenity or some guy flick or whatever, right? Something that makes you think I'm a man, right? And just sit and tie these knots repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again.
Like Vertical Limit? Cliffhanger?
Yeah, like, but a real man's movie. So like,
But not free solo, because then you're just not going to want to tie knots. while you're watching that.
Sure.
Feel like a great big sissy.
Right. Because you're a sissy. Anyway, the point is that you want to practice these knots to the point where you can tie them without looking at them consistently correctly. And then you start tying them in a shower with gloves on of cold water. Okay.
Yeah, but then you're still using both hands.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I use both hands in the shower every day.
I don't know. I wear rubber gloves and tie knots in the shower every day. So
Okay, you're weird.
I'm just saying, can you tie it with your non-dominant hand in the shower in freezing cold water in the dark? Can you even tie it at all?
Yeah, you can. Because in canyoneering, that never happens. No, in caving, I have had that happen once. It was a good day. Anyway, okay. So do we have the figure eight down and the bowline down, at least theoretically?
Hey, Tom, would you mind kind of reviewing something for me?
Please do, yeah.
Okay, so are these three knots that you're recommending for rebelays or for connecting your rope to a carabiner to a anchor?
Okay, so you're
Or what are this? When would we use these knots in specifically? Okay, I know that the figure eight works great, but it's hard to untie. So we were talking about the bowline on the bite, wasn't that what we did?
So here's what I would say is that a lot of these knots will work for the same functions.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of pick which one you use based on who you're around. So if I'm going to respond, no, I'm totally serious. So
Okay.
like if I'm tying an anchor knot and I'm tying it around a bunch of cavers who I've been caving with for 15 years, I'm going to tie a bowline with the Yosemite finish and call it even.
Okay.
But if I respond to an EMS call and I'm doing a search and rescue thing and I need to anchor something, I'm going to take a bajillion feet of webbing and I'm going to tie a wrap 3 pull 2 with a carabiner and a figure eight on a bite. And I'm going to waste all of that time because I don't care about the patient. What I care about is that whoever comes to check my work can look at it and be like, I know what that looks like. I know exactly what that is. Cool. We'll go ahead and use it.
You're not getting criticized.
Well, no, but yeah. Sorry. That's exactly what I'm doing is I'm saying they cannot criticize that.
Well, canyoneering is the same way. Everyone has their own knot, and it's like that's the right way, that's the wrong way, even though sometimes multiple different knots will work just as effectively. It depends on who you're with.
People who are dogmatic, who are like, this is the way, are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I very rarely ever say this is true, but people who are dogmatic and there's a 0 or 1 answer usually don't truly understand what's going on. When I did a bunch of knot testing, a review of knot strengths, what I found is they're all basically the same. There's some variations, right? But they're all basically just fine. And so when people whine about the strength of X knot or Y knot, it's because they haven't read. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I pick my knots depending on my audience. And what I want to do, why I'm having this discussion with you guys, is that when I show up to the rigging that say John does or Eric does, either one of them, right? I want to look at it and be like, oh, I know what that is. That's a bowline on a bite. Or that's a bowline with the Yosemite finish. And I'm going to look at it, glance at it, and just repel on it.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, what do you do if you don't recognize what's there? What's a good idea?
If it's something that you don't recognize and you're like, then tell the person who rigged it, I'm not comfortable on it, and I'd like to make it a more standard knot.
Cool.
Because your safety is up to you. If I do something on an anchor and you look at it and you're like, I can't tell what that is, make me redo it.
Or at least have you explain it, right?
Yeah, but I shouldn't be doing shit around you that you can't understand. You have to be able to check it for safety as well. And that's partially why we sit down and have these discussions about, okay, how do you tie a bowline? Because I'm gonna start rigging with, when it comes to bolts, I'm gonna rig with a Portuguese bowline with a forward facing loop. It's just gonna happen.
All right, man.
That's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna be like,
how I roll.
I showed this to you, Eric. You should know this.
Yeah. Cool. Wait, did you show that?
Not yet, no.
Okay, cool. All right.
Okay,
Fair enough.
so let's talk about how about, oh, actually, to answer your question about when to use these knots, figure eight on a bite is great for almost any application. Any application where you need a knot, no one's going to whine if you put a figure eight on a bite on it. Bowlines are fantastic when you want to have a loop that is a defined size and you don't need a whole lot of rope to do it.
And they're easier to untie.
Oh, they're so much easier to untie.
Right.
I
So,
converted almost all of my rigging to bowlines.
So
Personally.
bowling on a bite compared to a bowling, is there any advantage one to the other? You use double the rope with the bowling on the bite. Is there any
It's-
real?
Yeah, there's one advantage, and that's it's an inline knot. You can tie it in the middle of the rope.
Oh, okay.
So if you're doing a rebelay, you can tie it on a rebelay, but you can't tie a normal bowline on a rebelay.
Okay. Makes sense.
so I've got probably an unpopular question of
Trump or Biden?
no, that's a different unpopular question that I
Okay,
don't
fair
bring
enough.
up here. So with the figure eight on a bite, for climbing, a lot of times we'll use the alpine butterfly. What's kind of the difference there, or are they both basically they'll run and do the same thing?
No, actually, the alpine butterfly is totally different, and I really like it. So when it comes to inline knots, this is the one that you should know, the alpine butterfly, or just the butterfly, because there's only one. As an inline knot, it's where the game is at. Inline figure eights, they work, but they are a fraction of the strength of this little bad boy. And I know I said earlier that they're all basically the same strength. The only exception to that is the butterfly and the inline figure eight. The inline figure eight is a piece of trash.
Garrett, what do you want to play?
I would like to play
Whatever you want to play.
Smack the Child with a.
I was talking to my kid.
Just can you get it up? Yeah. So if I'm going to do an inline knot, I'm going to do this one, butterfly. Yeah. Or if I'm doing a rebelay, I'll do bowline on a bite. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, are there any knots that you guys want to learn, or should I just start showing you dealer's choice?
Dealer's choice sounds good for me.
Actually, I had a question about a bowline on a bite. I have heard that a bowline on a bite can have problems if it's ring loaded. Is that
No,
right? No?
no, it's fantastic in ring loading.
Okay, because that was like the whole appeal of the double Koresh or the fusion knot or whatever it is. It's like,
So-
oh, well, that's like that, but more safe. But I guess it doesn't.
What
It
they're
probably
concerned
doesn't
about,
matter.
what they're concerned about is, so you've got this double,
Mhm.
this bowl on a bite, and you've got a bolt here and a bolt here, and you know they're happily doing their thing. If you cut this loop, this other loop will disengage completely.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Right.
there is a knot that's we've talked about this. The
Yeah.
fusion knot, but it's like that, but based on a figure eight instead of a
Right.
an
And there was
overhand or
a
whatever.
gentleman in England who was doing some drop testing on these bowlines, and what he was able to do is he was able to get one to suck the other. He did this like this, yeah. He got this to suck the other loop down.
Uh-huh.
Now you notice it didn't fail. He just
Right.
took a nice little, 6-7 inch slide. Now I'm not saying that it's a perfect knot, but like all you need to know with that particular knot is when you're clipping to it, clip to both strands,
Yeah,
and then the
Yeah.
problem goes away.
right.
All right. Tom,
Okay.
yeah, just so when you do, you said this earlier, but it didn't internalize in my brain.
That's
So-
a triple bowline, by the way. That's not a bowline on a bite.
Okay.
But go ahead.
So I was thinking this was a bowline on a bite, and then you did something to finish it.
Yeah, you've already gone too far. Let me show you the bowline on a bite again.
Okay.
So I've got two tails. We're just going to throw them away. We're going to ignore them. what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a loop just like I do in the normal bowline. So I've got that tree in that hole. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the loop here, I'm going to shove it up through the hole. But now instead of going around the tree, I'm going to take this loop and run it all the way back around everything. So it forms a bridge behind there. Now what I'm going to do is suck out all the slack. And it's going to look like that.
Oh, okay. I understand. That's cool.
Yeah, it's bowling.
Wait, show me that again.
Sure. Okay. So again, I've got a bite here. I'm going to form a loop. And the loop's got the tree in the back. Sorry, I'm trying to tie it and show at the same time. Now I'm going to take the loop, I'm going to put it up through that hole. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this loop, I'm going to pull it, I'm going to make it wide, and I'm going to pull it around the entire thing. And I'm going to pull the tails of that loop to form my bowline loops. Almost had a dress there. There we go. And there are 6 strands to tighten down there. There we go.
Okay, I thought I had it, and then I just started to tighten it, and it's not right.
I just keep getting that just slippery nothing knots.
Okay, let me show you how I do this, and I'll try to talk you through the tightening, because I bet you that's where you're getting confused.
Right.
So
Can you back up maybe just a tad so I can see more of the rope?
sure.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
that about the right location for you?
I think that'll help, yes.
Okay. So the tails are just going to be behind my hand doing nothing. Ignore them.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a loop. There we go.
Yes. This is my
That's
loop.
better luck. Okay.
Da-da-da.
Now I'm going to take this bite tail.
Mhm.
I'm going to put it up through here.
Mhm.
And here's where it gets kind of weird. I'm going to take this.
I went the other way around, I think.
I'm going to go all the way around everything. And you can kind of notice that I've kept my little finger in here, because these right here, this right here, that's going to become the bowline loops. Okay. So I'm going to pull everything through, or pull this all the way around. And now I'm going to grab these 2 pieces that were hanging down from putting that bite through that hole. And that's what forms my loops.
Yeah. This. Yes. This is good. This is right. That looks right, right?
Yeah, that looks right. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. All righty. Thank you. I think I might have had that before and just not pulled all the slack out.
Yeah. That
So I
looks
have a
good.
question.
Yeah.
So a bowline on a bite versus like a figure 8 bunny ears, is your preference to bowline on a bite?
So my preference is whatever. Hold on a sec. Hey Ellie, I'm currently.
Hey Matt, real quick. When you clip into bunny ears and they tighten, it cinches down. But with both a bowline on a bite and a fusion knot, it doesn't matter. You have your whole body weight on this, and it's still nice and open down here. So when it's time, you know what I mean? Have you been in the bottom of like a bite on a rebelay or something, and then you come to take your carabiner out, and it's like, like these handle weight really well, and they won't pinch.
Right.
Okay, cool.
So to answer your question of when to use, are you talking about for a bolt, a series of 2 bolts?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of ways of handling 2 bolts. Bunny ears, bowline on a bite work just fine. My personal preference is a Portuguese bowline, just because it's easier to equalize.
Is that a bowline with a bite? Or Portuguese bowling.
Let
Okay.
me tie one really
I
quick.
know there's a bowling on a
Portuguese
bite,
bowling
a
is
bowling with a
weird.
bite.
This is kind of a trashy Portuguese bowling, but what you have is a bowling that's got these 2 bites and they change length.
Okay.
So the reason why I choose to use that is because it uses a minimal amount of rope. It'll adjust, and when I lock it in place and I tie my back up, it won't practically move. I've also done some drop testing on it, which I've got to write up and publish. Is that when one of the anchors fails, it'll slide just a smidge, and then it catches, and you have lower peak loads than if you have a figure 8 bunny ears.
Awesome.
But that's just me. Right. And there are lots of ways of tying that.
So with the Portuguese bowling right there, if one loop fails, so if one loop cuts, does the knot still hold?
So what'll happen is it'll slide, and then by the way, I did drop test this. I think it was 33, 34 times, something like that, with a rescue load. So with an 800 pound, or no, a 600 pound load. And what happens is when one anchor fails, the other loop will start to slide, and then it will lock in, and there'll be a gentle pendulum. Now you'd anticipate it to slide all the way down. It doesn't do that. At least
Wait,
not
are
with
we
pivotal.
are we calling this a Portuguese bowling, or is this a
No.
different thing?
That's bowling on a bite.
Okay, you guys already went over Portuguese bowling.
No, we haven't done it yet.
Okay.
Okay, do you want me to do Portuguese bowling now?
Before
Yes,
you do, let
please.
me just ask.
Oh.
So with
Yeah.
bowling on a bite, can you weight each of these loads individually?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
With a bowl on a bite, or sorry, with a figure 8 on a bite, you can. A bowl on the bite, you can't.
Oh no, this is a bowling on a bite. So a bowling on a bite, you have to load both loops in the same.
Yeah, you want to load both loops. Eric is shaking his head. Yeah, for bowl on a bite, you want to have both loops. You need a carabiner through both of those loops.
I thought you were saying like on the same anchor for both loops.
No, they can be different anchors,
Yeah.
but you need a carabiner through both of them.
Can you not tighten one of the loops entirely out and
You can.
and then it's safe, right? Otherwise you're gonna something. Wait, so you're saying you can pull one of the loops out, so there's only one loop and you can rig on that safely, right?
Is that what you're saying, Eric?
Yeah. Is that okay, Tom?
You could, but why would you? Just tie a bowl in at that point.
It's to bother you, man.
Okay, that's a fair point.
I mean, that is my life goal.
Well, then you're doing great so far.
Great. Okay, so I should show you the Portuguese bowling. So you guys actually already know how to tie it, you just don't know. So we're going to start with just the bowling in the beginning. So I'm going to start this just like the bowling before, and don't start trying to tie along with me yet, okay? And what I've done is I've given myself quite a lot of rope because this eats rope like a mother, okay? So normally what you do is you have the rope come up through the hole, back around the tree, caper goes back down in the hole. That's your normal bowling, right? Well, for the Portuguese bowling, what you do is you're trying to get another loop of rope right here in this bridge right there. That's your goal. And there are a number of ways of doing this, but here's the easiest. So you've got your extra loop of rope. What you do is you just lay the rope right over top of that bridge. So you've created a loop. See how I've done that? And now when I tie the bowline, just like before, actually, let me put a safety knot in here to make it easier for me. Now what I have is I've got 2 different loops that can change length.
I think I need you to run through that again.
I'm happy to do that. So you start out with your bowline like normal. Now all you do is you take this rope and just make a loop and just lay it right over the top of that bridge. See that? Now I just take the tail and I tie a bowline like normal. I'm going to use the Yosemite finish one more time just because I like it. Now I've got 2 loops and they can change lengths.
Do they slide, or do they like cinch
they slide.
down? So they'll always slide.
Yeah, they'll always
So
slide.
they'll just always equalize.
Yeah, but there's a lot of friction in this knot when you start loading it. So like you get it to where you want it to be and then load it and it's practically not gonna move.
Okay, cool.
So it's not like a load distributing anchor is what I'm saying.
Can you use this as a, oh yeah, you can't do this in line, right?
Inline, no,
Like
you could not.
midline, no, okay.
No, not a midline knot.
If you were gonna clip into the loops, you clip into both?
I'd clip into both right there.
Okay. Good. That's cool.
And remember when you get to bolts, ideally you clip to the bolt. John, did that work for you or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that is an ugly looking knot. We should tighten that thing down, man. Make it nice, tight, and sexy.
I like it, dude. I think it's real nice.
Is that better? Does that meet your satisfaction?
It's not tight, man. It's not a pretty knot.
All right, Tom, I'm struggling to do the Yosemite finish with this.
Okay. So the trick with the Yosemite finish with this is that you don't think. And that sounds counterintuitive.
No, it doesn't.
But it works just fine. So what you do is you've got it all set up and you've got the tail ready to rock and roll. You go around the tree, back down again. Well, this Yosemite finish is just around this same piece that you had before.
Oh, I just tied everything. Hold on. My loop. That thing. Go up through, round and down. No, that was weird.
Now, by the way, if you can't get this right, don't rig it this way.
Wait, why?
Why? Because you'll die. If you're having troubles, if you're rigging this and you're like, I can't quite get this tie off right, tie a different tie off. This is why I suggest people like, I mean, you can just do an overhand tie off for this. I mean, that's fine too. That's why we did that tie off first. All right. Now here is a Portuguese bowline with an overhand tie off. That'll work just fine.
Okay, is this the correct Portuguese bowline before I do the tie off? I've got my bowline there with the 2 loops that.
I see the knot again here. So it looks like the tail is coming out on the outside. So it's an outside bowline. So make that an inside bowline where the tail goes around the other way around the tree. Then you'll be able to do your Yosemite correctly.
Is this for me?
Tell Ellie I say hi.
Eric says hi.
Also, the other Eric, hi.
Hi, Ellie.
John says hi. Everyone says hi. That's where the mic is.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Tom wanted me to let you all know that cavers are way better than climbers.
It's true.
He lets us know at every available opportunity.
He's saying he lets us know at every available opportunity.
Cavers are better than climbers.
It's true. I can't help it.
Look at who's teaching.
What's really unfortunate is someone who identifies as a caver, climber, and a canyoneer. You're right.
Wow, it's so true. Like the number of times that I've gone out to like climbing walls to just like do some random climbing with friends, and I'm having to fix the anchors of the climbers. I'm like, come on, guys, this isn't even my sport.
Also,
Huh?
everyone can be jealous that you're getting Muddy Buddies and Cheez-Its for your lunch.
I am.
Yeah. So you have some snacks.
Those
Awesome.
aren't vegan, bro.
They're not vegan. I'm sorry. Are they not good enough for you?
That means you're not good enough for me either, Tom. Sorry.
Hey, Eric, can I just comment that I love that you're vegan because that means that I got your ice fishing stuff.
Yeah, yeah, sure. You're
wait.
welcome.
What? Lame. Okay.
Well, you could share with Tom, if you want.
I already
Good.
shared
You
with-
got a lot.
I split it with Jacob.
Oh, there you go. Right on.
Hey, Tom, is that correct?
Can you turn the knot around? Yep, nailed it. Perfect.
Hey, so do you have diagrams of this in any of your SAR 3 stuff?
Yeah.
Is it in the anchors thing?
Yeah. Do you guys want me to show you where all that stuff is?
I can actually drop a link to that one. But yeah,
Okay.
I want to see that.
Give me just a second here, and I will get. Let's share my screen here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, I am actually the CEO of a small nonprofit, and you can get to it by typing SAR3 rescue into a Google search for the first hit. This is the webpage. If you would like teaching materials on how to do a lot of the things that we're talking about, you can go to these links here. The teaching resources are for teachers. And this has things like lesson plans, and there's a bunch of handouts. And then the techniques descriptions are probably what you're looking for. That's where the stuff is that tells you how to do new stuff. So it has stuff on like lowering systems, anchors, haul systems, all sorts of stuff. The one that Eric is talking about is simple anchors made from rope. And this happens to be a favorite of a lot of people because it shows quite a lot of different anchors made out of rope. Okay.
I don't know if you saw, but it actually defaults to V2.
What?
Oh, you had a later version of this. But it's probably being
if it
both.
defaults to 2, it doesn't default to 3?
No, it doesn't default to 3.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, then
Yeah.
I'll have to fix that. So yeah, I want it to default to version 3. So here's version 3.
Oh, maybe it just says V2 at the top.
Oh no, if it says V2, it's V2. I don't know why it's not hitting V3. I'll fix that. Anyway, point is that it walks you through a whole bunch of different types of anchors that you can do. That's just a high strength tie off. If you're interested in doing things like how to tie a bowline, there's how to tie a bowline in gory detail. Notice that all of these diagrams have a nice tight set dress knot with a short tail at the end. Okay. It'll do other things like a figure 8 follow through. It'll do things like sheet bends, shows sheet bends versus bowlines, how they're the exact same knot. But then it gets into more complex stuff of like how to do sheet bends as anchors, how to start using them to make belay systems, or more complex systems as well. So there are a lot of different fun things. By the end, it shows you how to do some kind of boutique bowlines. This is one of my favorite boutique bowlines. It's called an eye bowline. It's yeah, its final tied form looks like that, with that being the anchor. It's a fun little tie. Anyway, you can go through it in your own time and place. This is the Portuguese bowline right here. In fact, I think no, this is the Portuguese bowline. This is the Portuguese bowline with the forward-facing loop. That's the one that I said I would use.
Would you clip into that forward-facing loop? What's the forward-facing loop for?
It's fully rated, so yeah, you can clip into that. You can build a Hall system off of it. You can belay off of it. You can build a Spanish pendulum off of it. All of the above. Yeah. All sorts of boutique stuff in here. This is my favorite page, though. All the fun stuff you can do with these double loop knots with a forward-facing loop. Anyway, I digress. Okay. Okay, so that's where to find some of that stuff if you want it. Okay, gentlemen, and I use that term exceptionally loosely. Do you guys want more? Do you want to just practice what you got? What else do you want to do?
I think it's better to practice than overload, for me anyway.
Yeah, like we've covered a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm still
all that
struggling
stuff.
with the Portuguese.
Well, you know, they have a hard time with U.S. citizens too. I understand.
What's your favorite knot that doesn't involve a lot of cultural appropriation, Tom?
Hey, Sophia's Portuguese, and she thinks I'm great.
Yeah, well, sure.
Also, Tom, as the meeting host, I did record the meeting.
Oh, you did? Awesome. Yeah, we should be able to make this available to other people if they want to just watch it at a later date. While I've got you guys here, do you guys have another couple minutes?
Yeah.
Should I keep recording, or are we done with the recording bit?
Yeah, why don't you turn off the recording and I'll cover teaching for